Hello, my name is Siim Oismaa. I'm the curator and the research worker in Estonian War Museum, and today I'm going to do a little presentation about Estonian Armored Train division during Estonian Independence War. And let's start with the beginning. Admiral Pitka is quite controversial character in Estonian military history, but he was the right guy in right time and right place. So before even the armored trains became the armored train, then Admiral Pitka had quite big influence on it. Matter of the fact that he was leader of Estonian Defense League, and on a windy November evening, Defense League patrol was patrolling Tallinn harbor area, and they found two strange looking wagons. One end was cut off and there was artillery piece. Unfortunately without lock, but that's not problem. And the same patrol team went to that Admiral Pitka that, hey, we found some peculiar stuff. And soon they went to the harbor area and discovered that the Germans who occupied Estonia in 1918 had left two artillery wagons behind, and depends on the sources, maybe one or two machine gun wagons, but I'm not very sure because there is no picture of them. And future General Laidoner, who was our commander-in-chief during the Independence War, appointed Admiral Pitka as a commander of the armored trains. Now comes the fun part. Simultaneously, that guy was a head of the Defense League and also commander of the Estonian Naval Forces. So three positions, quite different in any way. And it was quite soon clear that Pitka wasn't able to cope with all the tasks that was given to him, because simultaneously be the armored train commander and also be the commander of the Estonian Naval Forces. Although in December 1918 we only had few ships, but still we had to build the navy and the army and everything from the scratch. So the Pitka continued to be the main supplier of the armored trains until March 1919, but by that point it was clear that he's not capable enough. He has too many jobs. And Pitka was relieved from supplying the armored trains. And Admiral Pitka, and this is the first staff of Armored Train Division. Those two guys over here will be, I would say, the most important guys. And Captain Anton Irv and future Colonel Karl Parts, who were the commanders of the Armored Train Division. So, and I will start with the very confusing stuff, because this is in Estonian Independence War, it's difficult to understand sometimes, because when the war started, Estonian government and the Estonian Defense Force had to build everything from scratch. And also we had lack of officers, lack of manpower, and of course lack of equipment. So at the beginning, every formation that was formed in Tallinn or Pärnu or whatever Estonian city was kind of ad hoc, and nobody actually knew who is subordinated to other. And that made the communication lines and the command lines very confusing. And in case of armored trains, it actually goes all the way to the end of the war. So at the administratively, armored trains were subordinated under the general command of armored trains. in Estonian, soomusrongide üldjuht. By the way, it was the best translation that I could manage to do for that word. But when the armored trains were in front lines, fighting, for example, either in Viru front or in South Estonia or Northern Latvia, whatever place, then the armored trains and their units were subordinated under the regional commander. For example, when the armored trains were in Narva front or in Viru front, in Estonian Viru rinne, then the armored trains were under the 1st Infantry Division. And the command line went like this way. From Tallinn to Valga, where was the staff headquarters of the Armored Train Division, from there to Narva. Because Colonel Parts didn't like others to intervene his business, although he basically just copied the same command to the armored trains. And especially at the beginning of the war, from December 1918 until, I would say, February 1919, armored trains operate quite independently, often without approval of any command. And for example, liberation of Tartu city was done by the armored trains and the Kuperano partisan battalion without any clear command. And actually armored trains had last order was then to stay in Viru front, do not go towards Tartu, please support advancing 1st Infantry Division, because this is your main task. And the armored train guys were like, yeah, all the bridges are blown up, all the railways are broken, and we are bored. It's, in all of sense, it's quite a miracle that General Laidoner didn't get heart attack during the Independence War, because he had to deal with armored train commanders almost daily. So already in January 1919, by that point, we had 4 armored trains. And Captain Parts and Anton Irv started sending letters to the Chief of Staff that, hey, we need some kind of unit. Because we don't know where we're going to get our supplies. Plus the command structure is difficult to understand to everybody. The main reason why the armored trains were put together in one division or one unit was question who must equip them and who must provide them rear support. Because we are talking about trains. This is whole another logistical level of management. Finally, on the 10th of February 1919, Armored Train Division was created officially. Now I have to clarify a little bit about names, because I'm referring division. But during Independence War until August 1919, it was named Division in Estonian. So in Russian army system, division, I'm not currently using Estonian name because it's the equivalent of division is a battalion, but armored train itself is a regiment. So, and it makes a little bit difficult to understand non-Estonian or non-Russian speaking what we are speaking about. In Russian army, division meant, with divisia meant technical units like armored trains, armored cars, planes, for example, artillery and etc. So they are not like, they were separated from infantry or infantry division, making everything clear to everybody. So we're going to use division as a reference for, like in English, division, which means unit between army corps and the regiment or brigade. On the 10th of February 1919, Armored Trains division was officially created. Captain Karl Parts was appointed as a commander of the division, but he was wounded on the 25th of January and was in hospital, so Captain Anton Irv was appointed as a deputy commander. But already in February, the narrow gauge armored trains were put under the single command. Commander was Captain Albert Peters. When the division was created, then Albert Peters also became as a deputy commander of the Armored Train Division. Unfortunately, Albert Peters is killed in action in 20th of March 1919, and also Captain Anton Irv is killed in action on the 27th of April 1919. So all in all, throughout the War of Independence, Armored Train Division suffers the heaviest leadership casualties. We are talking one battalion commander, Julius Kuperjanov, for example, who gets killed he dies in wounds on the 2nd of February 1919. For example, Armored Train Division artillery inspector Lieutenant Reinhold Zabolotny gets killed on 1st of July 1919. He was third in command at that point. 23-year-old lad, by the way. So yeah, those boys grow up so fast. A little bit pictures. It was quite common during the Independence War that infantry divisions and also armored train divisions had their staffs, had their special staff trains, because railway was most important connection line anyways. So it's a very amusing picture. Over here with the bald head, he is Chief of Staff of Armored Train Division, Johannes Poopu. I will come back to him a little bit later. You have very confusing army unit itself, but more confusing gets with the officers. So division staff in February 1919. So finally the staff, in reality, staff was created on the 20th of February. And Lieutenant Colonel Johannes Poopu was appointed as a Chief of Staff. Actually, it was the staff, and the staff was put to work by Captain Arnold Hinnom, because Johannes Poopu at that point was in hospital, and he came to the division later. Majority of the dirty work was done by Arnold Hinnom. Another very important appointment was engineer Eduard Jürgens, because without him, armored trains would never have been armored trains during the Independence War. Although in case of Eduard Jürgens, I haven't seen his diploma from Riga Pylotechnicum. I know that he was in school from 1914 to 1915. Then he was mobilized into the Russian army and fought in Daugava frontline until 1918. So as far as I know, he never graduated Riga Pylotechnicum. I'm not very clear what he actually studied there. But sometimes, sometimes you have to be in the right place and right time and right moment with the right guy. And the Armored Train Division had also one thing that was completely different from the other Estonian infantry divisions. Armored Train Division had two railway factories directly subordinated to Eduard Jürgens. One in Valga and another in Mõisaküla. This is the staff of in January 1920, just after the end of the war. Some new names. But the main guys were the same. So, nice staff house. Its house is still in Valga. It's now Valga Museum. And it was theater and the culture club until 1960s. Here is a list of the units that was subordinated to the armored train division, and this is and to get this is maybe better to understand how big this thing actually is. You have broad gauge armored trains, narrow gauge armored trains, rear battalion, machine gun corps, staff, then armored cars battalion level, then 3 separate infantry battalions, or by the later on regiments, and also Valga City and Valga County Defense League. So all together by 1920, Armored Train Division was roughly about 9,500 men. About 10% of Estonian defense force was Armored Train Division. So this is division districts. So during the independence war, Estonia was divided between divisions, and the Estonian divisions during the independence war are not divisions in their sense like it's known in Western world. They are more like frontline commands. So for example, 1st Infantry Division was in Virumaa, and he commanded this theater of war. The 2nd Division in South Estonia, especially towards to Petseri, Pihkva. So the Armored Train Division was mainly, the rear area was in Valga and also in Mõisaküla, small town, and the 3rd Infantry Division was in Pärnu. That also reflected where the men were concentrated. So throughout the war, men were mobilized into the army units. So if you were, for example, from Pärnu, then most probably you were sent to the 3rd Infantry Division units. But if you have like special education, like railway or some other technical education, of course, Armored Train Division. So now comes the funny part. The mutual, a little bit about mutual relationships. Arnold Hinnam was one of those few Estonian officers who managed to flee Estonia in 1940. In 1950s, 1960s, Välis-Eesti kirjastus, Foreign Estonian Press or publishing house, published his memoirs, and they're still readily available, and there are multiple new editions from that. But his memoirs are a little bit different from those that he wrote to the war archives in 1920s, 1930s. If you read them, then you can actually see the book itself is like toned down a little bit. I've seen there like a little bit like self-censorship, and also foreign Estonian publishing houses, it tend to gloss everything over. Because yeah, this is now Estonians who are immigrants thanks to the war, thanks to the Second World War, and let's speak about nice things. And in Hinnam's memoirs, I have actually, even by page, pointed out a couple of extracts that actually can give a quite good overview how mixed was the officers and how mixed was the relationship between them. Now, according to the Hinnam, proper staff did not exist before his arrival. Because Popu was sick and there was not enough people in the staff. Hinnam also considered Irv as an excellent leader and soldier whose abilities far exceeded Captain Part's abilities. Captain Hirv didn't respect Popu, who was his chief of staff, because Popu, before being appointed as a chief of staff of Armored Train Division, was a head of Saaremaa Defence League. And in February 1919, we had a Saaremaa uprising organized by the local communists. Unfortunately, Popu got kopsupõletik, pneumonia. Yeah, kopsupõletik. And he was in hospital in Tallinn. Although he knew everything, but still found that Popu should have acted like more strictly or whatever. Another guy, Valdemar Songi, reserve captain, and he served as machine gun company commander in Armored Train number 1. And his recollections, like interaction between Parts and other senior officers even from the other units and also from inside of the Armored Train Division, were acrimonious. Parts had issues, and Armored Train number 3 commander Oskar Luiga points it out very clearly. I must say that in War of Independence, Captain Parts often cursed his subordinates in an obscene manner. This usually happened when a situation was difficult, and I got the impression that Captain Parts wanted to scare away the fear by shouting and cursing on others. It went so far that Oskar Luiga forbade Captain Parts, who was commander of the division, to enter his train. A bit of memories from Hugo Hack, where Luiga threatened to shoot Parts if he ever comes to his train. Because Luiga was considered one of the best Armored Train Division Armored Train commanders, but like he said, only I have the power of commanding my train and also discipline my men. Colonel Popu quite often acted as this middle person between the Armored Train commanders and also between the other divisional commanders. For example, Sigrid Binding, Colonel Sigrid Binding, who was commander of the Irboska defense line in September to November 1919, he hated Captain Parts, and Parts hated Binding. But there was the 2nd Infantry Division units were there in Irboska front line or defense line, and also Armored Train Division units were there. So the Popu had to be like this mediator between both sides. That actually reflects a little bit what happens Parts later, because Parts in 1920s, he couldn't manage the peacetime service. Basically, what Americans will call honorable discharge. It was let loose in 1925. He somehow graduated the military academy in Tallinn in 1925, but according to the memoirs of the others, then it was basically tracked through the courses. Although he was a teacher before the Great War. He was teacher, so he had school education. But war mixes up a lot of things. So, and now the Paul Villemi. Paul Villemi served as head of the landing troops of the 1st Armored Train, later on called Captain Irv. And Captain Edward Ets, like he was called, Neps, was the commander of that armored train throughout the war. And Paul Villemi, I would say, unfortunately, his life was cut short thanks to the Soviet occupation in 1941, but he had really good let's say, capability of writing. From 1929 to 1932, he collected the memoirs of the ex-Armored Train Division soldiers and officers and NCOs. And he took the interviews and he wrote his own memoirs. So I would say pretty good historian, or at least very good fictional writer, because he has like this way of the words. Eduard Neps, to understand him, Captain Anton Irv and Eduard Neps were best mates from even before the First World War. They knew each other. And from First World War to until the Anton Irv's death, they served in same units in Great War in Russian army. Then in 1917, they came back to Estonia and they served in Estonian national units in 1st Infantry Regiment. Same units. Either Neps is a commander and Irv is subordinated to under him, or vice versa. They are best mates. And Anton Irv gets killed. And Eduard Neps, in his memoirs written by Paul Villemi, says that it's not correct time to write everything down. And Paul Villemi, in his there's an extract between, on those memoirs that, yeah, I went to Lohu with a couple of bottles of vodka to put him speak. So, but I like Neps's memoirs because they are quite revealing. So about one guy, Captain Jüri Ratas, who was also a national hero of Estonian independence war. And Eduard is about Jüri. His own words, he was the brave and good soldier, but he did not like to lead the men in battle. He often forgot his duty when rushing forwards. That's why he didn't want to become the commander of the 3rd Armored Train. And Anton Irv also offered me this position, but he answered for me. You don't want this. We are together and we are combining some beautiful things here. I will tell him, Parts, that you don't want to be commander of the 3rd Armored Train. Told before, Irv and Neps served together since the First World War. So it's Kameradschaft in German, I would say. And Jüri Ratas was later got posthumously Liberty Cross, but he was commander of the Armored Trains landing troops, but most often he stayed behind or just acted as a regular soldier, so Neps had to take everything over again, or young ensign, future major Paul Villemi. So after now the another part, it's called after Sangaste battle. We had a lot of bridges and railways to repair. It was broken by the retreating enemy. The trains could not continue. 3 of us, with Captain Irv and Telliskivi from the signal platoon, walked along the railway and saw Battle of Paju. However, the repair of the bridges was not finished yet, so the trains could not move forward and attack the enemy. Paju Manor attacked the Paju Manor from the sides and behind. Conquering the locations like Paju Manor was always easy for armored trains because the landing party could threaten the enemy from behind and the batteries of the trains could support the landing party. So this is before Paju battle. Paju battle in Estonian independence war is one of the bloodiest battles happened in Estonian soil. Prior to the Paju battle, there was Armored Train Division commanders, train commanders, and plus Julius Kuperjanov was there, and they had meeting. And Anton Irv said to Julius Kuperjanov, "Wait for us. We have 4 bridges to repair and about 200 meters of railway under constant enemy fire. It's not easy job. Stay behind with your men, do not go forward, give them a rest. And when the bayou battle started, then one artillery guy from Armored Train number 1 in his memoirs is saying like, Antonijev just walked along the railway and was cursing it. Julius, what the hell are you doing with my men? Because thanks to the lack of signal equipment, the armored trains couldn't support from Sangast to Paju. It's about 8 kilometers. So almost maximum effective range of armored train artillery pieces. And in that kind of distances, and if you don't have clear sight, to use artillery fire is sketchy as best. Yeah. In the end, Kuprianov battalion lost 42 men killed or wounded. But Julius Kuprianov, who is also considered as a national hero of Estonian independence war, but if you start like looking how he led the men and how he fought his battles, from 1st of January until his death on the 2nd of February 1919, in space of 5 weeks, he loses 40% of his battalion. Killed, dead, missing, wounded, sick. So by end of the Paju battle, there was only one company fully intact, and that was commanded by Jaan Unt, who later became as a commander of the Kuprianov partisan battalion. National hero, I would say, yes, his contribution in 1917-1918 in organizing Defense League, etc., organizing volunteer-based battalion, but every battle is high casualty. I'm just putting it this way. 1st Infantry Division, who went on offensive in 6th of January 1919 and reached to the Narva front line or river line by the 22nd of January, less than 3 weeks, about 3 weeks, lost fewer men than Kuprianov partisan battalion in 5 weeks. Whole division loses less, division casualties are lower than one battalion casualties. Yeah, but national hero, what to say. So Hugo Hack, who was commander of machine gun platoon in Armored Train number 3, and Hugo Hack also is amazingly good writer. His memoirs are basically 4 volumes, are in National Archives, readily available to read anybody who can read Estonian. But I have taken a couple of extracts from there. The command of the armored train was made of group of good and energetic officers. Most of them were from the Russian Tsar's army during the First World War. Most of them were acquaintances, but they did not have previous experience together. Therefore, neither did they know or knew each other's military abilities and skills. There was also no experience how to use armored train in a battle. Only a few of them had seen an actual armored train, but that too from afar. Battles were fought almost every day with great enthusiasm and without coercion. If there was a bigger and noble or bigger battle, what Estonian armored train guys called mulin, bubbling in English. It was quite a problem with the men. No one wanted to stay on the train, and such occasion they even had to cast the lots to decide who would go to battle and who would stay and train as a train guard. His very honest opinion on the January 1919. He says that if there had been one more retreat, half of the train crew would have run towards the Tallinn. Continuous retreat at the end of December and the beginning of the January, of course, had a very bad effect on morale. But what he points out, that when Captain Luiga was put as commander of the Armored Train number 3, he saw rise of the moral, because Lieutenant Thalheim, Estonian, although German name, wasn't very able guy to lead men in battle, but that wasn't actually Thalheim's best quality. The best quality was actually organizing stuff in rear area. Thalheim is when the Armored Train number 4 was built in Tallinn. Then actually Thalheim wasn't appointed as a commander of the train, but he was appointed as a supervisor. Yes, the correct word of that. So let's go to the trains. Yeah, here is the list of altogether during independence 6 broad gauge armored trains were built. On this slide we can see all the dates when units were formed, and also the commanders. In case of first, second, third train, I would say a majority of the crew were volunteers, and especially in case of second armored train, there's a little bit parity between the crews. The second armored train is literally from Tallinn. Like it's, and for example, first armored train, you have men from Saaremaa, from Läänemaa, from Virumaa, and from South Estonia. But the second armored train, and they kept their like Tallinn vibe throughout the war. Majority of the men are from the Tallinn. And number 3, a little bit Tallinn, a little bit Virumaa, and also South Estonia. Number 5 and 6, mainly South Estonian men, mainly. So there actually even difference between the crews. Yeah, armored trains were important, but in addition of the armored trains, 3 broad gauge and 2 narrow gauge repair trains were formed, mainly to repair the bridges and the railways. And also repair trains included mobile workshops to repair weapons and other equipment, which was at that point very important. And of course, now we go to the Valga. This is Edward Jürgens. Picture is taken after the war because he has a new armored train patch on him. But he's a little bit weird guy. Yes, we don't know his exact education, but that's not a problem. And in 1922, when he was brigade engineer, he was put into the military court because embezzlement. He embezzled about 1.6 million marks from the armored train budget in space of like 1.5 years. This has happened after the war. And usually when you were put in a military court, you were stripped basically everything. Your pension, your military ranks, also Liberty Crosses, everything. You basically became persona non grata. But on rare occasion, in case of Edward Jürgens, the head of the jurisdiction of the military court decided that, taking the consideration that his contribution into the independence war, rebuilding almost 30 to 40 bridges, plus the railway and plus basically creating armored trains, yes, you can keep your Liberty Cross. And in 1926, his pension was given back. But there was another small thing. He and his accomplice Paul Mägi, they paid back 800,000 marks. And it came actually out of very easy, because they were kind of like buying equipment from the locals, basically wood and etc. So what armored trains needed, and armored train brigade started making inquiries, because where the money goes, but the equipment and state of the warehouse doesn't change, but the money goes somewhere. And later they found out what's happening. But let's go back to the war. Liberation of Valga. Basically from that point, trains got so-called new lease of life. Before, I'm going to put the picture over here. This is Valga's railway factory in 1920, part of it. Railway factory was built already in turn of the century, and thanks to railway factory, Valga city became Estonian city. Before that, it was Latvian city, but whole railway infrastructure created about 500 jobs there. And all those men in South Estonia who didn't have land or didn't have any job went there. So in few years, Valga city was made as Estonian city. Before that, it had Latvian majority in city population. Quite interestingly, Valga railway factories came out from Great War and also from German occupation and all the whirlwind of the revolutions, quite intact, which is weird. But if you look on the map where the Valga is, then I kind of get it why you have to keep that railway factory in working order as possible. And prior liberating of Valga city, the Valga railway factory workers started hiding. Valga was occupied by the Red Army, but before liberating, the railway workers started hiding tools and other spare parts and equipments around the city. So every time the worker went home, put something in a bucket, went to some kind of tree, yes, under the snow, because you couldn't keep anything in house. Johannes Trubok, who later serves in Armored Train Division, he in his memoirs are very good example of this. His apartment was searched every morning and every evening. And when the Valga was liberated, it took about 5 weeks to get the railway factory again working in full order. We had at that point trouble even feeding our own army, let alone the people. One of the things that Eduard Jürgens did was very simple. He divided armored train into two different parts. First was battle part, or the A part, or the shock part. You can name it like you want. The shock part was, battle part was 2 or 3 artillery platforms, 2 or 3 machine gun wagons, 2 or 3 landing platforms, etc. And the B part, or the base part, was all those parts had a separate locomotive. So the B part had wagons for staff, crew, kitchen, ammunition, and other equipment, plus the crew compartments. To the fact that every armored train had 10 men cavalry platoon per train, so you had horses also there, just why they're not. Horses had actually quite big importance because wrecker platoon was used to scout the railways and the bridges ahead of the train, and also they did deep wrecker, so that they have their mission. And under the normal circumstances, A and B part moved together, but when the battle started, the soup train, as a B part was called, was unhooked and left behind. Or if the terrain could not provide sufficient protection, then up to 8 kilometers. And this is because the most common artillery piece, the 76mm cannon, the effective range is 8 kilometers. Occasionally 120 or 130mm naval guns were put on the separate carriages. So this is how the trains look like beginning of the war. This is in February, and later on this is just a battle part. And every armored train had the control platforms or the empty platforms ahead of the train and back of the train, because if the railway is broken, then those two are that go off. So and also very good places to put equipment and spare parts to mend the railway. And to see how long this thing. This is one train. This is the B part, starts from here and ends about that place here. And this is A part over here. So this is armored train number 2, and at that point the armored train 2 has 26 wagons. For example, this is for horses. Armored train number 3 during a battle of after the battle of Võnnu, and the whole train is in one picture. So, but the battle part basically ends over here, and this is typical artillery platform of armored trains. And this is armored train number 2 in Riga in October 1919. And also, in case of Riga, at that point, armored train number 2 and number 1 got also extra artillery platforms from the other trains. So the composition of the armored train, it depended on the mission and also depended on the welfare of the rolling stock. So if something was in repairs, and for example, one armored train was on the leave in Valga, but another train needed artillery cars, so it was quite normal. They actually switched cars between them. And later on, it's hell of a confusing because not all Estonians understand the basic of the logistic of the railway. So yeah, armored train number 5 has appeared almost everywhere, but armored train number 5 has never been in Riga, but he has appeared in everywhere, because armored train number 5's artillery platforms were most often used as a substitute artillery platforms for the other trains. So during the war in Valga, 9 artillery platforms, 14 machine gun wagons, 5 landing wagons, 2 mortar platforms. Unfortunately, there is no picture of the mortar platforms, but I'm questioning how effective they were, because at that point the effective range of those mortars that were used by Estonian Defence Force was about 800 meters. So yeah. And also during the wartime we had Allied called Northwestern Army, Russian Whites fighting against the Red Army. When the Northwestern Army was liquidated, we got 5 armored trains from there. But there was so lack of repair and in so poor conditions that they were scrapped. The guns were taken, but the rest of it was scrapped. So now comes the fun part, how Estonians create armor out of nothing. So the beginning of the war, and yeah, this is like beginning of the war, Estonian armor, basically poorly armored or none at all, basically. Double walls, gap between them was filled with the sand. In rare cases, in very rare cases, somebody had the clever, big brain moment, put things in the sandbags, makes things life easier. And sometimes trench shields were also used. But Edward Jürgens, in his memoirs, he made 3 different types of armors. And he made this one because this was the most effective. So it was very simple, up to 10 millimeter thick armor plate or boiler iron. That's boiler iron is the metal that is used for making boilers for the ships. Highly graded steel, because boilers have to resist the heat and also the pressure from inside of the boilers. So it's very good and very efficient, but it also can use as armor. So another inch board, so just 2.5 centimeters of wooden plank, and 100 millimeters of linen turf. Linen is, we make clothing out of linen. But if you press linen together and put it into space and you press it together, so linen has it makes like this kind of environment. Then when the project comes, it slows it down. Again, just in case, up to 10 millimeter thick armor plate, and again inch wooden board to keep the splinters away. By the way, majority of the Second World War tanks didn't have in case of splinters, didn't have any protection inside of the crew. So Estonians making armor out of nothing. And each platform had places for crew and ammunition and equipment. So the artillery platforms were so-called large American type platforms. Usually they had two cannons. One is one side, another is there's an other side, and also I'm gonna put also those walls in here are on the hinges. So you could actually turn armored artillery piece 180 degrees. You just had to lock the hinges and all the sides go down, or to the sides. And this is the first one was from Narva, from Valga Railway Factory. And over here is Anton Irv, commander of the Armored Train Division. Here is Jan Lepp, who commander of the train. Lieutenant Pallon, who was commander of the artillery battery in that armored train. Also, Pallon was called Uku because he had like very good eye of directing fire. So inside of the artillery wagon, you can see over there the guy with the pipe is Jan Lepp, who's commander of the train. But I'm going to point out those things over here. Where is the mouse? Those are artillery shells. And here are bunk beds for the artillery crew. Here is what we call bursuika, or stove. And every artillery wagon had, I don't know, I haven't seen any, because they didn't write everything important down. Like numbers, like how many square meters and how much this. But it's estimated that every artillery car had, before going to the battle, at least 200 rounds minimum. So if it would, that kind of thing could hit by the artillery from opposition, then it's very simple. You just get all the pieces back in one box and put all the names on it and send it away. But that Estonian armor was capable enough to stop rifle rounds, machine gun fire, shrapnels, and also low caliber or small caliber artillery pieces. Another design with naval guns. Armored train number 5, artillery car called Tasuja, and from here picture you can actually see how open you can actually the artillery position make. And in case of that, here they have actually lifted it more up, and we know that in case of this artillery platform, this artillery piece could turn 360 degrees. Yeah, those things were built basically during the wartime, and just like wait and see, and if it works, then it works. If it doesn't work, then let's think of some other way. In case of, it's not very good picture, but here is better. If you can see over here, those are bolts. So in some cases, especially in artillery wagons, we can see that those are section-based made. So if one section got hit, you just bolted the section, damaged section off, and put the new repair section or new section on it. I don't know. And Edward Jürgens, I don't know what kind of education he had, but still. Machine gun wagons, again, very important for the armored trains. Every wagon had about up to 6 to 8 machine guns. Every wagon had up to 14 men. It depended on how many machine guns. There was usually 2 guys per gun. So one is the gunner and another is substitute gunner, or who feeds the gun. On technical level, preferred guns were the Russian Maxim machine guns because they were most numerous and also plenty of spare parts and ammunition. But interestingly enough, quite a lot of United States-made Colt Brownings ended up in armored trains because they had lever action gas system design. So basically what it is, that machine gun works with the powder gases. The lever action is front of the gun, so every time you fire, that kind of lever moves. But on the as using as an infantry position, that may hit the dirt and jam the gun. So it was much more easier to put those in over here. This is like a typical machine gun wagon. And here is inside of the older type of machine gun wagon. So you can see again oven in the center, machine guns, guy just reading a newspaper and lying on his position. His machine gun is over here. That guy, that good-looking guy, actually, is Ernst Kasmandorf, later on Ernst Soomuste, who was commander of the 5th Armored Train. Inside of the landing wagon, quite cramped. And it's 3 level bunk beds. Another thing about the landing troops. Usually the landing troop guys were the younger ones, because they can fast more. They can run more and faster. And older men were served as artillery guys or the machine gunners. But the landing troop had 2 main tasks. The first task was actually securing the armored train. So when the armored trains were stationed for some time, in some point, then usually the landing troop guys were sent out. So 1 kilometer in every corner of the world. So about 1 kilometer from front, 1 kilometer back, and on the sides with telephones and the cable. So their mission was very simple. You spot the enemy, you call up, and all the armored train men will prepare the battle and will also cover your retreat. And that was most important. And it was also most dullest and also not very popular, because other guys go to battle, they get war booty like tobacco or some cases sometimes even alcohol or new boots, whatever. So there was unofficial written law among the armored train crews that those who had to stay behind, either as a guarding the armored train or heating the landing platform, because there was also oven and it had to get in warm. Because when the guys are coming back after a heavy battle, there are some casualties, there are some Estonian weather is bad today, and it was bad in 1919. So you come back from the battle, you have some losses, your clothes are dirty and wet in some cases, but going back to your landing wagon, which is warm, and there are guys are waiting you and giving you hot meals or hot drinks, that actually cheers you up. So there was an unwritten law that those guys who had to stay behind got the best tobacco. And of course, the landing troops' another main task was fighting with under the fire of the armored trains and conquering the bridges, taking the cities, taking the high-value targets. And in many cases, because armored trains never worked alone, so always there was 1 or 2 armored trains. So the landing troops were put together as a single battalion. And again, democracy. When the landing troops were put together as a single battalion level unit, then officers, so usually either one commander of the armored train, was appointed as head of the battalion. And it was voted. Or who pulls the shortest straw? So yeah, this is outside of the landing wagon, so you can see it's quite similar with machine gun wagon, and yeah, firing ports just in case, and yeah, enough that two guys can even pop their head out. So now comes the smaller brothers, so the narrow gauge armored trains. We had 2 railway systems. One is broad gauge, another is narrow gauge. The broad gauge is 1,521 millimeters, and the narrow gauge, sorry, we had 3 different narrow gauges, but the main narrow gauge was 948 millimeters or something. So compare, no, very good example. You can see height, according to height of the men, how small those are compared to the broad gauge armored trains. Basically half smaller. But the narrow gauge armored trains were a little bit separate from the main armored train division, because their rear area was in Mõisaküla, and in Mõisaküla there was a narrow gauge railway depot and also a small factory. And they were kept a little bit away from the others, thanks to the fact that narrow gauge lines in Estonia at that point came from Tallinn to Viljandi to Pärnu, and Pärnu to Kulbena in Latvia. So actually the line was quite short. Narrow gauge armored trains, the most active part ended in June 1919, when northern Latvia was liberated. And after that came the other thing that the Latvians don't want to acknowledge Estonia had to keep substantial forces in northern Latvia, especially on the railway, because local Latvians like to destroy the railway. So imagine that you have 5 armored trains continually patrolling between Mõisaküla and Kulben. Because local Latvians. And in case of armored trains, narrow armored trains, there was only one complete loss during the Independence War. Armored train number 4 was lost in Battle of Appe on the 7th of April because the railway was destroyed by the enemy artillery fire, and the armored train crew then decided to burn everything down and retreat. It's one of the rarest examples where Estonian High Command doesn't prosecute commanders, because loss of a narrow gauge armored train, which is battalion size unit, about 300 to 400 men on good days, plus artillery pieces and all the equipment, etc. This is high value target for and loss of the armored train in questionable after the questionable decisions. I'm still a little bit amazed that Captain Heinrich Metz didn't suffer any consequences, because during the wartime Estonian Chief of Staff was quite strict on commanders. If your battalion loses too much men, you will get switched. Now, for example, there was in April 1919 was Battle of Ruhja, where basically one battalion from the 6th Infantry Regiment was overrun and taken prisoners, at least half of them. Then the commander of the 6th Infantry Regiment, Colonel Johan Puskar, was degraded as a junior secretary in clothing warehouse. Junior secretary, because he knew how to read and write. So at least you had something good value in here. Later on, after the war, he was given back his military rank, but that's it. He got Liberty Cross because it turned out that he actually can manage the whole supply chain of getting clothes from the warehouses to the front lines, and yeah, but not in the frontline service anymore. So and also in Battle of Kulben on the 13th of May, at least 2 or 4 wagons from the armored train number 4 were discovered. That turned out that the Russians had actually, Red Army had recovered at least some part of the train. So it was recovered, and also in Battle of Kulben, Estonian armored train, narrow gauge armored trains captured 2 semi-intact opposition Red Army narrow armored trains, and from there Estonians made new number 4 and new number 5. So as you see in the pictures, they are smaller than the broad gauge armored trains. In case of narrow gauge armored trains, I'm still a little bit amazed how they could counter the recoil of the artillery pieces. This is 76 millimeter. It's almost wide as the train itself. And out of the all armored trains, narrow gauge armored trains were most colorful. Here is a little bit snowy, but you can see how small everything is compared to the bigger ones. And this is number 5. So narrow gauge armored trains had almost all their wagons were painted this blue, grey, white camouflage, which actually comes from Navy. During the First World War, Navy ships, both in Russian Army and Russian Navy and also in the British Navy, were camouflaged like this. And during the winter time, it's still usable. Armored Trains division had three, I would say even 4 infantry battalions. One, the most famous one, was Kupriano Partisan Battalion, formed by Julius Kupriano, who died in Battle of Paju. After the Battle of Paju. Kupriano unit or partisan battalion stays under the Armored Train Division until 1921, or sorry, until 1920. Then the Scouts Battalion. Scouts Battalion started their combat path as a landing unit for the narrow gauge armored trains. But in the case of Scouts Battalion, majority of the wartime was actually subordinated under the 1st Infantry Division. And commander of the 1st Infantry Division, General Alexander Tõnisson, didn't like to give that battalion away. And there was a lot of fighting over that single battalion. Towards the point where the Chief of Staff of Estonian Defence Force during the Independence War makes a deal with the Armored Train Division and the 1st Infantry Division. So the Scouts Battalion stays under the 1st Infantry Division, but all the commands come through the Armored Train Division, stationed in Valga, another in Narva. And also the money, so every soldier during the Independence War got paid. So all the money, everything, all the leave system came through the Valga. Sometimes you have to make amendments with others. So Scouts Battalion finally comes back to the to Armored Train Division late in war or after the war. Kalevi Battalion, või Kalevlaste Malev in Estonian, started battles in January 1919, but in March 1919 it was given under the Armored Trains. So another part was Armored Trains Reserve Battalion. So the duty of the Reserve Battalion is actually to train men for the Armored Train Division units. But majority of the war, Reserve Battalion acts as a frontline battalion. And it was led by future Colonel Emil Kursk. Emil Kursk is the youngest colonel of, as far as I know, in the Estonian Defence Force throughout its history, because he became full colonel when he was 31. And Emil Kursk was considered during the Independence War and after the Independence War one of the most capable battalion level commanders. But not many know that. And also Võru Defence Battalion was merged into the Reserve Battalion. And after summer 1919, the narrow gauge armored train landing troops were also attached with the Reserve Battalion to act as a combat unit. The reasoning is very simple, because narrow gauge armored trains didn't need that many men on the trains anymore, because now they are doing mainly patrolling missions. And if you have a lot of soldiers doing nothing, there's trouble. So it's easier to send men to battle, to stay behind. That's one of the reasons why narrow gauge armored trains look so colorful, because boys are sitting just in the corner, having cigarette, etc., thinking stupid thoughts, and some bad happens. Easier, fresh bucket of paints, go and paint. And Albert Ojasson, again, one guy that doesn't get very good recognition of what he did. But Albert Ojasson came back to Estonia in March 1919. He was trapped in northern Russia, and thanks to the Allied intervention in northern Russia, in Arhangelsk and in Murmansk, he was able to get back to Estonia. But at that point, when he was in northern Russia, and basically unofficial representative of Estonian Defense Forces in Allied intervention in northern Arctic Russia, basically. So, but at that time he was very clever because he got plane pilot papers. He was trained as a pilot. He had very good knowledge about technical stuff and also machine guns. So when he comes back to Estonia, Ojasson is sent to Armored Train Division, and he makes a special machine gun course because Armored Train Division used 5 different types of machine guns. So every machine gunner had to know what to do. So all in all, about at least minimum 400 men were trained under him, and also Valdemar Songi that I was referring before. And also Armored Train had their own cavalry squadron called led by a guy called Ernst Sender. And in 1924, it turned out that he is not officering. Yeah, and he stayed in the service until 1924, and during the peacetime. So if you had just wartime officer education, where officer course from the Russian army, which was like 3 to 6 months, depended on the occasions. So if you wanted to stay further in the service, you had to go to the new officer course in military academy. It lasted about 9 months. So basic course where you can, for the peacetime duty. He was wanted to send there because if you start reading his file, then he was excellent officer. He was very good commander of the squadron during the Independence War. Captain Einar Lundborg, who served as a commander of the armored car called Kalevipoeg, and Ernst Sender, they worked together a lot during the wartime. So the armored car and also cavalry squadron. And I have read both Einar Lundborg's memoirs, and every time that guy is like, hey, that guy is really good cavalry officer. By the way, Einar Lundborg, Swedish officer, graduated Swedish Military Academy in peacetime, had served in Thai army before the Great War. So he was a peacetime educated officer, basically university degree or being second lieutenant. But it turned out Ernst Sender didn't have even papers for that he ended any schools. If he had go and retired in 1920, nobody would even care to look at his documents. So August Nylander was appointed as armored car battalion commander. In Estonian it's called armored car column. Soomusautode kolonne. But let's stay on battalion because this is the most easiest way to say it. It's not company, but it's battalions. So August Nylander, he was orchestrant, musician. But in 1916-1917, he graduated the armored car platoon commander's course in Russian army. So, by the book, he is very very qualified for the position of the battalion commander. He's a captain also, little peacetime service, etc. So By the 10th of October 1919, when Albert Ojason takes up over the position of Armored Car Battalion, 5 cars out of 6 are in repairs. There is no lack of spare parts for any of the vehicles. There is no working rear structure. And in many occasions, if the men wanted to get something done, they took a white piece of paper, went to August Nylander and somehow get his signature. Went back to the office, typed, yeah, we need spare parts for this car, send. In his memoirs, August Nylander also escaped to West, and his memoir, he's the greatest commander ever. But if you start going into real details, then yeah, greatest commander ever. And of course, it depended on the situation where the armored cars were used. Or if the armored car is okay, you go to the front lines. If not, let's wait. Maybe the armored train depots have time to repair them. So now comes the guy called Sergeant Kont or Mihkel Kont, who literally is acting commander of the armored train battalion, and he's military clerk by official. He's a clerk, and he's quite experienced. He has been in Russian army since 1916, and he had 8 class education plus military clerk courses. He was a very capable guy. And it turned out that Mihkel Kont, who basically runs the stuff, and basically he was simultaneously commander of the armored car battalion superintendent, so a commander of the rear unit, and also commander of the rear unit of the first armored car group. First armored car group, one car is almost from beginning of the summer 1919 until end of the war in Viru front line, and Valga is here, Viru is over here. When Ojason comes, then Kont is finally relieved from all his positions and given very nice office work, just be the battalion treasurer, basically bookkeeper, and a week or two later, he was put it as basically a sergeant major of the battalion. So quite capable guy. He got even Liberty Crosses for that, and etc. And the Armored Car Battalion became fully fledged combat unit after basically when Ojason was appointed as a commander. So, but how things worked, I don't know, but somehow they worked. And there were 6 machines in battalion, divided into 2 groups. And on armored trains, cars were subordinated to the unit under which they operated at the front. Oh, sorry, a little bit flunk English. And armored trains mainly acted in southern front. So a little bit position. All the armored trains and also armored train artillery wagons and all armored cars had their own unique names. And those names are Toonela, which means Valhalla in Estonian mythology. Vahur comes from Edward Bornhöhe historical fiction novels that were quite popular in 19th century. Vibuan, etc. Kalevipoeg. And they looked like this. This is armored car Tallinn. You can actually see tents over here, so yeah, they were quite actively used in battles. So this one better, this is armored car Estonia. It was later on rebuilt, but here you can see the overview of the vehicle. Compared to the Red Army armored cars, Estonian armored cars were always more heavily armed. On the top there is a revolving turret, 360 degrees. It had 37mm autocannon. Behind the car you had two semi-turrets and both armed with 76, both armed with Maxim heavy machine gun. And also, pop here, this is Ajax, so yeah. The co-driver who sat in here had his own light machine gun. Compared to the Red Army armored cars, which were basically made for being armored cars. Those are Estonian armored cars are lorry, let's make armored box around it. But compared to the Red Army, yeah, Estonian cars were heavier, they were bigger, they were a little bit not so maneuverable and could use only good roads. And usually armored cars went to battle near the rear end first. So you had two machine guns and you had also the autocannon, and when you needed to retreat or go back, then it's easier. You don't have to turn the car around. So, and according to the men who served on those cars, it was noisy as hell, and usually there was section doors between. So if you wanted to say something to driver, basically it goes like, yep, hand and shouting. And I don't know how, but according to Captain Einar Lundborg, who was commander of the armored car Kalevipoeg, they had about 200 rounds for autocannon. Although those are small, this is only 37mm, but still, and up to couple thousand, up to 5,000 rounds for machine guns. And according to Captain Einar Lundborg, it was so cramped that they had to take one guy out. And some old ammunition and etc. you had up to 8 guys inside of it. Estonians were smaller 100 years ago. Armored cars usually work as groups. So you have two armored cars in one group. You had a supply car, vehicle for the petrol, for the ammunition, and also for the spare parts and etc. And also a liaison motorist. So, for example, in case of Pisu and the Kalevipoeg, they were one armored car group, and especially in battles in South Estonia in March, April and beginning of the May, those two cars acted together, plus the cavalry squadron that I mentioned before. And according to Captain Einar Lundborg, the usual movement was like one car went forward a little bit, the second car came back, so the first car would act as a guard, so giving the when was situations like this, giving the covering fire, and they acted like this. This is used, and you have cavalry units both sides of the roads. By the way, this is how currently motorized infantry is deployed. Captain Einar Lundborg had never seen the armored car basically before that. Commander of this armored car called Pisuhand was Konstantin Lindemann, who wasn't even officer. He was opera singer and whatever, according to his memoirs. How the hell they came up with that plan to move and used cavalry and infantry on both sides of the road. This is basically inventing stuff out of nothing. Estonian Independence War, and you can actually compare it a little bit with deployment of the tanks in Western Front, because in case of Great Britain and France, even deployment of the tanks with the infantry, it was basically, okay, this today worked, but tomorrow it didn't work, just okay, let's make it new plans. Because how to use and how to deploy tanks in Western Front was basically learned by the 1918. But how Estonian officers got like ideas? Again, let's do things Estonian way. Armored car Pisuhand was captured by the Finnish volunteers in March 1919, and the Finns wanted to get that armored car to Finland. They managed even to get on the train, and the train managed to get to Tallinn harbor, and in a last grasp of moment, there was phone call from 2nd Division that, hey, stop that train. Tallinn garrison commander Oskar Raudsepp, with his very good old chaps called Tallinn Üksik Eskadron, the Tallinn Single Eskadron, captured that armored car again. Knowing how Tallinn Single Eskadron acted throughout the war, I'm still amazed that they didn't kill anybody. Those are again guys, shoot first, ask question later. And originally the Pisuhand is open top, so it had 40mm anti-aircraft cannon inside it. Estonians look at, okay, we don't need that because Reds don't have so much air power, and even if the Estonian planes come to the front line, usually Estonians shoot them down. So do not use them. But the Estonian armored car, it was rebuilt in Pitka workshop in Tallinn in Suur-Patarei tänav. So they added new roof in over here and added conventional, by the Estonian standards, rotating turret with the 37mm autocannon. This is the Armored Car Battalion's workshop and garage in Valga. By the way, those buildings, at least this building, is still there. Yeah, a little bit jokes. Armored Car Battalion got also their own artillery platoon, or half battery. Vemmal in Estonian means penis. Not in so politely said, but it means penis. Yes, it will get you demonetized. Another thing, Estonians, let's make artillery a little bit different. So it's back of the one lorry, and you can see there is a cannon inside, small 57mm cannon. And he had a brother called Sorts. Puuk means small nasty animal that sucks blood. I don't remember the name in English. But as far as we know, Puuk and Sorts were never used in battle. But we know that Vemmal and Müristaja were deployed at least for one day in Viru front, and in December 19 and January 1920 they were in Lämmjärve district, where Estonian army actually kept substantial forces. One cavalry regiment, 2 armored cars, etc. Just in case when Russians tries again after the signing of the peace treaty. So after the independence war, Armored Train Division ceased to exist, basically, because from March 1920, so about almost 2 months later, Estonian army started demobilization process, and also transferring or creating new peacetime army. So the Armored Train Division was reorganized as a brigade. All the infantry units were taken away, but all the technical units like the Armored Car Battalion and the Tank Battalion stayed attached there. In 1921, it was to the budgetary cuts. The narrow gauge armored trains were dismantled and put in long period storage. But in 1929, it found out that all the platforms were in so bad condition that it wasn't point to restore them. So all the rolling stock was given to the railway administration. And by 1923, only 4 armored trains were left. One regiment in Tapa, another regiment in Valga. And in 1936, those 2 regiments were put together as one armored train regiment in station Tapa. And by the 1930s, the idea of armored train, we cannot say it went away, because during the Second World War, both Red Army and the German armies in Eastern Front used armored trains because vast spaces, and also in the Western Front because thanks to the valiant effort of the Allied bombings, then you needed to protect your supply trains. So if you look to those pictures, but from the Second World War, especially from the German side, then the supply trains were also quite well armed, not specifically armored, but armed. So yeah, but in Estonia it stays.